as we were deciding if we wanted to stay and dive deeper into our lives here or sell everything and travel, we let ourselves sit with that decision for a little while, a few months. And I want to share a few of the thought processes that I noticed reoccurring during that time that helped me sort through those feelings as I made the decision. The first was we at first felt like we had to make a really strong decision. And then the next day, the other person would be like, oh, I don't know. Maybe we need to think about this. And so we realized really quickly that we were going to put like a pause on a decision. We were going to let ourselves have this grace period where we could feel all the feelings without any commitment to the result. And that was really key. We had the luxury of time to be able to do that. And partly because we weren't moving because there was a job somewhere else or a specific location. It was very much this inner rising up within us over and over, calling us towards this. So it's something that we could choose to listen to and run with, or we could try, and we did for years, find every way here in our community, which we also love. We love our life here. And we could dive in even deeper. And so I knew in myself that if we were going to do that, then I still needed to make some changes to adjust. So I started kind of debating what those were and how they felt. If we moved to this area again fresh, would we choose this location? Now that our kids are grown, we live an hour outside the cities, about an hour away from our relatives. It was an amazing place to raise kids and step away from everything and enjoy nature and have several acres and just kind of do our thing. But if we were to just drop ourselves back onto the map, would we choose here? I don't think so. I think we'd choose a little bit closer to family, or we choose somewhere that wasn't so extreme in the cold. It's been like -25 here recently, and that was not even counting the wind chill. That was the temperature. -25 Fahrenheit. That is cold. And we're over it. We're so sick of it. And I don't work out in the cold. My husband does. So he's really sick of it. So we started feeling this feeling. I would notice myself for every single day I would drive to school or to wherever I was going. And I'd look at the houses and the farms and the businesses, the people, and I'd just feel. I'd tune in what my thoughts were about them. And I'd think, oh, look at what a cute house they have. Or that house has garbage all over. And I'd kind of pay attention. Like, take off my fantasy, everything's perfect goggles and just really start to feel if I was analyzing this place for the first time. That was part of it. The next part was, could I just appreciate this place and not have to live here? And when I started thinking, if I was moving completely in blind, there are small towns like this all over the Midwest, if that's what I was wanting. I love our small town, and I love some of the business owners and some of the businesses, and there's a great waterfall and hiking trails, and it's beautiful views. It's not nothing. But it's also, we've been here 11 years, and we do not take full advantage of them. We're so busy with our lives and these other things that we have done that we don't get out hiking as much as we'd like. We've only gone down the river a couple times. If it wasn't for some of the activities to our son that he's involved with, it would have been far less than that. And so we had to get really honest with ourselves that sometimes there's this catch-22 feeling where we have a lot of the things we like. And I know other people like this. They have the boat and the four-wheelers and the campers and all of the things that equal this perfect life, but they don't get to use them. They bought it, they used it for one summer, they took the RV out for one trip, and now it's been sitting for 4 or 5 years. And this happens all the time. We like the ideal life that comes with that item, but our lives are so full and we're so busy surviving oftentimes here and trying to make enough to afford life and make a good life that we don't even realistically get to use a lot of the stuff we've bought. And we have been very deliberately cutting things out of our lives and having calm. So at this point, if we're still not using them, it's probably realistically not going to happen for at least a decade until my husband's retired. The next thing was family. Love our families. Feel really grateful to have been within an hour of most of them. But again, I only see them a couple times a year. Even when I am free, they're all busy working their butts off as well. So it is really hard to wrangle us all and get together. And when we all live about an hour apart in these triangle-shaped patterns, it's not easy. And I had to think back to a time in my early 20s when I lived out of state, and I would fly home once or twice a year. And I actually had more quality time during those visits with friends and family than I have in the 20 years since while I've lived here. There's something about when you know that that's the time you get, you sit in the moment with people and you visit and you connect on what really matters. And that's really important. And so I had to remember that and trust that feeling that kept coming up. That most of these relationships, I actually won't see them less. And in fact, will probably be more deliberate in how and intentional about how we spend time together. Whether it's doing FaceTime calls or when we do come home and visit or inviting them to come visit us. The different ways in keeping those relationships that matter to us alive. The next thing was the fears. Now, I've talked about this in a previous video. I had to get really clear about what are my worst fears about this. How could those happen? Is there anything we can do to prevent them? And the thing that kept coming up for us is it's not a risk-free decision to stay here either. There's other issues happening here, and the cost of healthcare and the cost of, I've noticed even within myself, we have healthcare. And there's still certain things that I put off doing. And I feel like eventually you have to pay the piper because you can't just avoid healthcare and not have repercussions at some point. And so I started really being honest with myself about that. If I took that away, what would that look like? If we actually paid less for healthcare, which is very common, if you are anywhere but the US, you can get healthcare for a fraction of the cost. Many people will get traveling health insurance, and then oftentimes you just pay cash along the way when you do need a checkup or if something happens. But there's healthcare there in case you need it. So suddenly these things that kind of put off can start catching back up on. And then I started thinking about from a different perspective, like at the end of my days, how would I look back at my life? Would I feel really proud that we stayed here and we didn't honor this feeling? Would we be glad that we stayed in this land and this property? And even though we do love it, I mean, it wouldn't be a bad life. Or would we be so glad that we took the chance and maybe we end up back somewhere close to here? But we wouldn't return the same people. All of those experiences do not leave you the same as before you had them. And then I had to look at like our grown daughter, who the reality is I had to have many conversations with her because she is in her career building time. She lives with her boyfriend. They are both building their career, and there's a strong reality that they will not be in the cities here. And so if I stayed here for her, I think at some point I'd be really resentful, especially if she ultimately didn't live here. And now I'm sitting here in the freezing cold January weather and she's not even here. And I didn't want to burden her with that guilt of that either. And with technology nowadays, there's so many ways to keep up with each other that I don't see her even every month anyways, and we live an hour apart. She is so busy with her life and her friends and her, she's living her best life. She loves it. And I'm so happy for her. And I actually think if we do decide to sell the house and can invest that money and have it there, that creates a little bit of a buffer should an emergency arise for her as well. If we need to help her with a down payment at some point. There's just some other possibilities that open up that we're not in a position right now to be able to offer. So she will still be the main priority and her needs. It's just going to look a little different. And so that's been a work in progress of making sure she knows that as well. And that space does not equal love. And that some ways, ultimately, when I come back and visit, we'll have more quality time together. And it can be on a timetable that works for her and her schedule as well. And if she ends up in a different city, then we'll go there. So I'm choosing to trust that that's how that will happen. So all of these things, though, over the last, several weeks, months, we let them sit there, and then we would connect again and say, me and my husband, and connect and say, how are you feeling with everything? What are your fears coming up? What are the things you want to make sure that we talk about or we address? Have you changed your mind? And we gave each other the room to feel all of those feelings. I didn't want him to feel pressured to do what I wanted to do. And I also didn't want to sacrifice what I wanted to do to just make him happy. I've done that in my life, and it doesn't lead to good places when it's not from a true place. So we had to slowly just keep this dialogue going for years in some ways. But mostly, once we both knew we wanted to go, we had to just allow that to flow until finally we were both like, no, we're good. We're all in. This is what we both want. We've thought through all of these options, from physical things to financial things to health things to security to family and friends. And now we need to plot where we are on each of those currently and where we want to be on each of those, and how do we get to each of those best scenarios with each of them. So that's been a little bit of the mindset behind making the decision to sell everything. We've been very deliberately trying not to do it from a place of lack or fear, but instead honesty and what we really want out of life and what some of the limitations of America are. And I don't believe anywhere is perfect, but I also don't believe that America is leading anymore in the way that so many of us like to think that it is. And so I'm not anti-America in any way. I'm very grateful for so many of the mindset, innovation, hardworking parts of me that have come from this culture. But I'm very open to learning better ways and seeing ways other cultures do things, and piece by piece putting together a life that best serves us and sets us up in a way where we can best serve the people around us as well. Hopefully that is helpful to you if you're going through the same decision. It can be so overwhelming, and there's no perfect answer. What's right for us is not necessarily right for you. It wouldn't have been the right decision for us a year ago or 2 years ago. And so I don't feel like it's a right or wrong thing. It's choosing two different roads and making whichever road you choose work. And if someone else chose the other road, I have no judgment. Like, we could have just as easily chose that and still made a really good life. So hopefully that was helpful. If you have anything you would add, please share in the comments. I always believe we can learn from each other and our experiences in life. So I thank you for being here, and I wish you a wonderful day. Bye.